Hi guys, hope everyone's well and welcome back to the Improvement Podcast. So this episode is going to be on hydration. It's actually my third attempt recording it, so I've had plenty in practice of doing so. So jumping into the episode, hopefully this one actually works. Last two episodes I recorded, they crashed as soon as I finished them, but I'm trying a different software, so hopefully this one works. So yeah, in terms of why the episode on hydration, so right now it's obviously summer in the UK, and it's much warmer than it usually is, even at this time of year I believe, and it's a better time than ever to talk about hydration. Not that hydration's ever not important, but it's a bit more important now because the chances of being dehydrated are higher. The chances of you running into issues in terms of your performance or energy levels throughout the day and just becoming dehydrated as a whole and experiencing negative effects of it is going to be more likely to happen if you're not, let's say, having a focus on it. So right now you want kind of like not that you should never not focus on it, but you want to increase your focus and attention on your hydration. So touching on what actually is hydration. So hydration is basically a combination of your water and electrolyte consumption. So quite a large kind of mistake people make is they just focus on one. So they just focus on their water intake. Typically they think, oh, I'll stay hydrated, I'll drink plenty of water, but it can actually mean, if they're drinking excessive amounts of water, mean they've not got much electrolytes in your system because you urinate them out if you have excessive amounts of water. So it's not just the one or the other, you want to have an appropriate amount of both. And electrolytes are things like sodium, potassium, magnesium and calcium are some important ones. There's some others, but they're kind of the main ones. And in terms of electrolytes, they just again play a good important role in hydration, your ability to perform and your overall health on a daily basis. So it's something you want to be mindful of. And sometimes if, let's say, you're feeling like you've got low energy at the end of your sessions, it can be a problem with your nutrition or potentially your hydration, not being hydrated enough. And in terms of why you want to make sure we're hydrated, like I said, it can impact your performance. It can also impact our energy levels and our ability to focus. So all obviously having a negative impact on our ability to perform well and progress in the gym. Not only that, but it only takes a 2% drop in body weight for the negative impact to come to fruition or to experience a negative impact. So we want to make sure we're ticking our boxes in terms of being hydrated and making sure we're having plenty of fluids and electrolytes throughout the day, so we're not running into issues, like I said. And it's often why people experience cramp just from not having enough sodium in their diet. And the reason why you want sodium is basically we use calcium for muscular contractions, and we want to basically remove calcium, which sodium's a carrier of, so it kind of carries it outside the muscle cell, if that makes sense. And if you don't have sodium available, then the muscle will keep contracting and not release, which is what you basically experience when you get cramp, which is never pleasant and will definitely not help your performance if it happens during the gym. And your blood volume can also drop, meaning the amount of the amount of blood overall in your body will drop, which isn't great in regards to our ability to get a pump, in regards to our ability to deliver nutrients and carbohydrates to the target muscle, which will ultimately impact our performance and ability to recover. Again, part of what helps us recover, if you think about all recovery modalities, they just promote blood flow, promote the delivery of nutrients, amino acids, glycogen to the target muscle, which helps us recover actually. So that's why we want to make sure we've got enough water, as well as not being great for our overall health. A good example why is, one of the many is, with your blood volume dropping, your blood glucose levels will be higher. Your blood glucose is basically like your blood sugar levels, how much carbohydrates you've got circulating in your blood, and you want them relatively low for the most part during the day. The reason being is, if blood glucose is elevated for an extended period, you're in a good position to build or to put on body fat, but not in a good position to build muscle. We want the opposite. We want our blood glucose to be nice and low. And that means we'll get good pumps in the gym, we'll utilise the food well in regards to building muscle and not so much body fat, which is obviously what we're after. And in terms of how to ensure we're hydrated properly, so like I said, Hydration is a combination of adequate water intake, but not just that, but also adequate electrolyte consumption. So you want to have a focus on both, as I've suggested. And in terms of how to ensure we do so, we want to make sure our urine colour is clear or very close to it. And that's a good measure to kind of assess if you're drinking enough water. And in terms of another metric is drinking to first. So drinking to first is basically, as it suggests, when you're thirsty, drinking water, and that ensures you're hydrated. However, I'm not sure how great a metric that is personally. I'd rather just be on the safe side and not let myself get to the point where I'm feeling pretty thirsty. Because for myself, just from experience, it's like recently when it's been really warm, when I've felt really thirsty, I go to the bathroom. My pee's a bit darker than I'd like, to be honest. So I personally just like having routine with how much I drink and making sure that my urine's close to clear and I'm drinking a decent amount to make sure that's the case. And the importance of hydration is even higher first thing in the morning. Saying that, it's obviously important before training, but in other words, a good time to make sure you're getting plenty of fluids in is first thing in the morning. Why? When you think about it, what have we done for the last 8 hours? We have not drank any fluids. Or if you sleep 9 hours, 7 hours, you get the drift. For whatever time you've been asleep, you've not drank any fluids. So then you're going to typically find that you are a wee bit dehydrated in the morning. And also, as well as that, when we are obviously asleep, we breathe, I should hope, hopefully. So when we are breathing in, breathing out, we exhale like basically water, which is why if you obviously breathe on a mirror in winter or on glass or whatever, it steams up because you've got moisture in your breath, you exhale water. So if, let's say, we're not taking in any water but we're breathing out water, then we're going to potentially be a bit dehydrated upon wake. Not only that, but if you're sweating, then first of all, I'd recommend not being in a warm environment where you're sweating when you're sleeping. The reason being is we want our body temperature to be nice and cool when we are sleeping. And as well as that, when we are like sweating, we're going to be obviously expending water. When we sweat, we basically are losing water. We're also losing electrolytes, which is why if you've ever sweated and you've got a lot of sweat in your face, a bit drips on your mouth or whatever, it tastes quite salty, if that makes sense. Reason for that is because, again, you excrete electrolytes, you sweat out electrolytes when you sweat. So that's why it's definitely important to make sure you're getting a good amount of water in first thing, just because we've not had it in the last 8 hours and we're still losing it while we're sleeping. So typically, I'd recommend at least 500ml in first thing in the morning. I think that's a good place to be because it kind of sets you up for success for the day. Like if you're starting your day dehydrated, you're kind of chasing your tail for the rest of the day, whereas if you get like a good bit in, get a good morning routine on the go with it, you're setting yourself up for success. Especially with training in the morning. If you're training first thing, you don't want to be at the gym and then drinking a ton of water and trying to be hydrated. You want to be kind of like one step ahead. You want to have a good amount of water in before you're even getting to the gym. So what I'd recommend is make sure you are drinking plenty like before training, if you are training first thing. Personally, I have like 1.5 litres. If I'm training in the morning after my first meal, I'll typically eat at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'll get up at 7 and then I'll get to the gym if I'm training first thing at like 9:15. So by that time I'll have 1.5 litres in, and I'll also have a shaker with my pre-workout, so that's another 600ml in before I even step in the gym. And that basically ensures I'm ready to perform, progress my lifts. I'm not going to be dehydrated, which will affect my performance in a negative manner. So in terms of, obviously, everyone's different. I, on a daily basis, consume about 6 litres. Recently I've been consuming a bit more if I feel like it's needed, just because how warm it is, how much like you sweat when it's warm weather. But I don't really give set recommendations because everyone's different. Does someone with, let's say, I'll get into what kind of like affects how much you should have, but just make sure an important time to make sure you're hydrated is before your session and first thing in the morning are two main times to be mindful of. And in terms of how everyone's different, not everyone lives in the same climate, not everyone does the same activity levels and basically their job or training on a daily basis, and not everyone is the same body weight and has the same amount of muscle. So they will all influence how much liquid and electrolytes you'll need on a daily basis. So I can't really give you a definite figure. For example, someone who lives in Spain, they have a job and their work environment's really warm throughout the summer, and they typically do a lot of exercise outside the work. They cycle to and back from work, and let's say they are a relatively heavy individual. They're going to need more water than someone who works an office job in Scotland and weighs 50 kilograms instead of someone who weighs 90 kilograms. They're not going to have the same requirements. So that's why I'm not giving a definite figure, because everyone's different. Everyone's needs aren't the same. And same with like what temperature, regardless if you live in Spain or not, what temperature is your gym like in the summer and the winter. So yeah, the same applies how much electrolytes you should consume. Luckily, you don't need to drink like the right amount of water to the mill. You don't need to have the right amount of salt to the milligram. Your body doesn't work like that. Your body is quite flexible, or in other words, it's smart. If you consume a lot of salt, you're not gonna experience any negative side effects. You're not gonna drown drinking a wee bit too much water one day. As much as obviously you want to be mindful of not taking things too far, but your body kind of auto-regulates its salt intake if you take let's say more salt, and same with like water. So I like to be on the safe side. I'd rather drink, let's say, an extra litre than a litre too little, because at the end of the day your body can just pee it out. You just want to obviously make sure not going too far that you're drinking at ridiculous amounts, because if let's say you're drinking a ridiculous amount of water, when you go to the bathroom you release sodium or salt. You excrete electrolytes as well as water. So if you're, let's say, having too much water, you're kind of overhydrated and you're peeing out all your electrolytes. So that's something I'd be mindful of, because a good analogy or a good thing to think about is it's like diluting juice. You want a good concentration, so it's not too strong but it's not too weak. If you keep drinking an absolute ton of water and don't put more diluting juice in, it'll become watered down and it'll just taste watery and minging, and you might as well drink water. Or in that case, that's basically resembling if you're drinking too much water. Or you'll make it too strong, you're not drinking enough water but you're having enough salt, and then you'll find it tastes minging, it tastes too strong and bitter. The same as with your hydration. You want to be drinking an appropriate amount of water with electrolytes, etc. And yeah, like I said, I'd rather a bit too much than too little. And if you're going to, let's say, the bathroom ridiculous amounts and your urine's always extremely clear, then you could maybe try drinking less, so you find like a sweet spot to be in. And when it comes to electrolytes, we don't just want to consume electrolytes, we want a correct balance of electrolytes in our body, which means we want an appropriate amount of sodium and potassium and other electrolytes. And if you eat healthy, clean foods and don't consume salt, then you're probably dehydrated. What I mean by that is, when we think about like what foods contain a lot of salt and sodium, it's things like Chinese food, burgers, pizza, things like that. And the reason why they're typically salty is salt tastes good. Salt typically makes food taste better. Same with things like chips. So you are going to be consuming probably a decent amount of salt if you eat a lot of junk food. However, if you care about your health, your nutrition, and you want to get the most out of your fitness goals, you probably aren't eating an absolute ton of junk food, or I'd recommend not anyway. And as a result, you probably don't consume a lot of salt. You don't get a lot of salt with some lettuce and just food you eat on a, like, you have things like potatoes, bananas, which do contain like potassium, which is obviously electrolyte, but we don't typically consume a lot of salty foods unless for some exceptions. So what I'd say is, you're probably not having salt if you're not, or probably maybe dehydrated slightly or under consuming salt if you're not purposely adding it into your food if you eat a very clean diet. So personally, what I do is I have 2 grams of pink salt and 1 gram of solo salt per meal, if you want to nerd out with it and have it exact. The reason why I have 1 gram of solo salt as well as pink salt is, solo salt is basically low sodium salt, as the name suggests. So salt basically contains sodium and potassium. The solo salt, or low sodium salt contains 50% less sodium, so we've got an appropriate amount of sodium and potassium. We've got a good balance of electrolytes, because we don't just want to throw the kitchen sink in and have a ton of electrolytes. We want an appropriate balance of each. Just like how, let's say, if you are, what's a good analogy to use? Just like, again, you could say like diluting juice. You want a good balance of water and juice. Same applies with salt. You want a good amount of sodium and potassium, if that makes sense, or else it's not going to be very, very nice. So yeah, that's why I have that. And pink salt, there's nothing too magic around it, to be honest. There's a bit more nutrients in it and minerals in comparison to other salts, but it's nothing too magical. But you can grab any really sea salt or a pink Himalayan salt, or there's like Redmond's real salt that can have some benefits to it because it's got iodine in it, but it doesn't really matter. Have salt, and if you want to get most out of things, 2 grams of standard salt and 1 gram of low sodium salt is what I basically go for. And you can also use a hydration formula that can help in terms of hydration, with other benefits to performance surrounding it, like because it could contain other ingredients like taurine, for example, which can help in regards to performance and getting a pump, and also preventing cramp and helping you deliver carbohydrates to the target muscle, which you can find in some electrolyte supplements. I use one called Hydromax by Strom Sport, and that brand does a lot of good products, to be honest. So yeah, check it out if you're interested in one. And I have basically that intra-workout, as well as that 3 grams of salt on 5 meals of a day, or not of a day, sorry, in a day. And when it is hotter than usual, like in the summer in Scotland, when you are training in, let's say, a hot environment, you will arguably need to increase your fluids and electrolytes a bit further. If you feel like you're going to the bathroom, you're a bit dehydrated just from sweating a bit more than usual, especially if you work outside or in a warm environment, this will become even more of a priority, or you're exercising in a warm environment, then I'd look to increase your fluids and electrolytes if you see the need to do so. So as we sweat, like I said, we excrete electrolytes like sodium, which is why it tastes salty. So be mindful when you are in a hotter climate or more active to change it accordingly. For example, now I'm drinking like an extra litre a day the last few days, just because how warm it's been in the gym, and I still feel like I've been slightly dehydrated and I can't really have enough water just due to that. So yeah, make sure you're definitely consuming plenty. And personally, as well as that, like I said, it's not just like water we're focused on. We want to focus on having enough water and also having enough electrolytes. So I've also been consuming 2 extra grams of salt in my pre-workout meal. Not my pre-workout meal, sorry, my pre-workout shake, which is just like a non-stim pre. So that's what I've been doing to just ensure I'm hydrated. If you don't consume any sort of flavoured drink pre-workout, it might taste a bit bogging, so you might not want to do it in that fashion. You can get things like salt tablets, electrolyte tablets as well, or you can just gub the salt and then tan water, unless you're a fairy, that is. So yeah, that's what you can potentially do. And in terms of some tips regarding staying hydrated before I finish the podcast up. So, sounds weird, it's like just drink water, what you're on about, have salt, but sometimes people struggle with it more than just it. It's not that simple for some individuals. Some people struggle a bit, which I appreciate. So a tip that I recommend is get into a routine with it. Find out what leaves you hydrated and make that a goal. Meaning, if usually you drink 4 litres, you're hydrated effectively, then make that a goal, structure that into your day and make it a bit of a routine. For example, like same with like my nutrition, my sleep, I don't have to think about it because it's on autopilot. So I know I drink 1.5 litres before 9. I'll drink another 1.5 litres before 2 o'clock, or sorry, not before 2, before 1, before I have my pre-workout meal. From there, I'll drink a shaker worth of water with my pre-workout, so that's another 600ml. I'll drink 1.5 litres during the gym, and then I'll drink another shaker, which is 600ml after the gym. So it's autopilot. I know how much I'll drink and when, so I don't have to think about it consciously on a daily basis. So I recommend you doing something similar. And also carrying a water bottle. It sounds very simple, but it saves you being behind. Like if you go out the house, you've got no water, you get stuck in traffic, then you could maybe, I'm not sure, whatever you're doing, then you could be behind on your water unless you buy some when you're out or that. But if you just bring a bottle, then you'll just not have to play catch up, because you don't want to be like behind the 8 ball and then have to go train, and then you're like 2 litres less than you usually have before the gym, which you don't want. So just carrying a bottle on you kind of like reinforces the cue you've got to drink water, reinforces the habit, and can help in regards to your consistency doing so. So that's what personally helps me, and I recommend giving a bash if you struggle to drink water. And you can also get, obviously, quite popular now, it's like the half a gallon water bottles and gallon water bottles, or just get one you like drinking out of. As silly as it sounds, it might encourage you to drink water. For me, I like just having a 1.5 litre bottle of water, just because it's easy to keep track on throughout the day, and I enjoy it. And that's how much I like drinking during my sessions. So in terms of like the episode, just a quick recap in terms of what to focus on, and the most important parts is hydration is made up of water and also electrolytes. Make sure you're considering both and you're not just having one or the other. Make sure your urine is clear or close to it, and you've not, let's say, got an excessively dry mouth. That's a sign you're potentially dehydrated. And when it's hotter than usual, it's potentially a good idea to increase the amount of fluids and electrolytes you have if you see the need to. And make sure you try and get into a good routine with your water. You drink plenty in the morning and pre-workout, because that's when it matters most in regards to hydration. So hope you've enjoyed the episodes. Any questions, please let me know, and would greatly appreciate any support when it comes to leaving a rating, review, sharing it on your story and all that. So hope everyone has a great rest of their day and they're enjoying the sun.